So finishing up the discussion of the threat of new entrants are two very important concepts. One is the lack of differentiation. What this simply says is the product, all the products look about the same to the customer. And they're not going to have any preference for your product over somebody else's product because the products are about the same. That means it's strictly a price-based differentiation. And in a price-based differentiation, it's easier for someone to come in and join that fray. For example, does anybody have any loyalty to gas, a particular brand of gas? I don't think most people do. So if somebody were to come in, put a service station up with some unheard of gas, but was, in fact, quality fuel, the same as everybody else, and charge less for it, people would flock to it. So that would be an easy entry because people don't have any loyalty to a particular brand. The next point is switching costs, is something I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about because it's one of those elements of strategy as you plot your products and as you design your value chain that you want to think about. On the surface, switching costs are really easy. Well, it's what it costs the clients to switch, or the customers switch from one brand to another. But companies do very clever things to try to erect switching costs. And sometimes they do it by design. Let me give you a few examples of classic, brilliant switching costs. I, and probably many of you, are a member of Amazon Prime, which says I pay $72 a year and I get free 2-day shipping on all Amazon products. The fact that I've paid that money becomes a switching cost for me because if I'm going to buy something online, all things being equal, where am I probably going to buy it from? Amazon. Why? I've already paid for 2-day shipping. Why wouldn't I use it? There's a lot of analysis that goes on that says that Amazon loses money on its Prime buyers in the sense of over the course of a year, the average Prime buyer gets a lot more free 2-day shipping for that $72 than everybody else. But the way Amazon sees it is, but they bought their product from me and I made more money. So literally when I buy stuff online, often I will start my search on Amazon, use their reviews, then I will go to other websites, see how much it costs, and I will come back to Amazon. And if Amazon's within $1 or $2, I buy from them. Why wouldn't I? Because I've already got shipping paid. So that is a brilliant, brilliant way to structure the business to create a switching cost. Other things that you see all the time. How about all those loyalty punch cards? Buy 5 McAllister sweet teas, get a 6th free. What is that? A subtle switching cost to say, hey, if you go eat lunch at that other guy, you're passing up an opportunity to get a punch on your card and get a sweet tea a little bit faster. The final thing I want you to open your eyes about switching costs are these things. Okay, so I'm an unhappy Apple product carrier. And the reason I'm unhappy is because I've never cared for Steve Jobs, so I don't really like to support his company. Obviously, the product itself is excellent. But I'm always looking to abandon Apple and switch to a different phone. But I have a switching cost. I have an investment in these apps, and I have equipment with my iPad and aviation that works well with the particular app I have that only works on Apple products, only an iOS-based app, and I pay $80 a year to buy this. It gives me a whole raft of aviation data on my iPad. So if I switch to one of these other products mid-year, I invalidate that subscription I have with that account. So that's a switching cost. And then, how many of you want to go out, having bought all your apps from the App Store, and want to go replace everything and rebuild it all on Google Play, or vice versa? So now, how many of you have actually switched from an Android-based phone to an Apple or vice versa within the past year or so? That's a great example of a switching cost. It's painful to switch. And so you'll see companies that very consciously try to induce these switching costs because it's going to keep new entrants out, and it's also a subtle form of differentiation so that people will stay with your product because it's costly to go to others. The bargaining power of the buyer. This is pretty much a straight power play. So when the buyer is a major buyer of your product, when there are low switching costs, when you have undifferentiated products, when you're selling a product that they need, but the reality is they could substitute for it with something else, or they could do completely without it, then they have power over you because basically you need them more than they need you. Then you have the idea of backward integration. If your buyer can backward integrate into your market, that caps what you can charge them, because you're always worried, if I charge too much, if this industry looks too attractive, then that buyer will come backward and enter my market if that's a player. And then lastly, you see this idea of buyer earns low profits. And this is to say you can't close the sale unless you cut your price, because they literally don't have the money. We saw that in the economic downturn of the past several years, where companies had to cut their prices to consumers because the consumer couldn't pay the original price. Likewise, in the business to business, a lot of the OEMs really pushed their suppliers because they said, hey, we're not making any money. We publicly report our profits. You see we're not making any money, so we have to have a price break. Next, we're going to move on to the power of the supplier, which you're going to see is very similar to the power of the buyer. Join me in the next video.